have Jordan Webb. He's going to talk to us about some options for financial outlook, preparations, I don't know. Planning, there you go, thank you.
All right, I've got some papers here to pass out. Some of this is pretty small, but I do have it. I'm going to put it up on the projector that we'll go over. So, just want to take one of these and pass it now. Okay, so for those of you who don't know, I'm Jordan Webb. I'm with Pathway Financial Solutions. Right now for USD 298, what we do is we do help administer your Section 125 benefit plan, and then also your 403B retirement plan as well. So, I'm going to plug this in real quick. I think what the main reason why I'm here tonight is to talk about retirement plans. So what some schools are doing, kind of in your area. I know that you guys are doing away with the early retirement plan. So Mr. Crenshaw asked me if I'd come and talk about, maybe some other options that you guys can do. So is everybody familiar with what a 403B is? So if you're not, what a 403B is, it's a 401k. So if you think of a 401k, think of a 403B, it's very similar. It's really just the IRS trying to confuse you. So governmental entities will use 403Bs as their retirement plans. Private companies will use 401ks. The beauty about a 403B is that you can design it as a school district pretty much however you want to design it that fits your employees' needs. So, for example, I'll use Salina, USD 305. They have a 403B, what's called an employer-funded plan. And what an employer-funded plan is they'll just put money away for each employee, where the employee does not have to put any of their own money in there. Okay. However, that employee gets to decide how they want the money invested, so on and so forth. Also, there's a vesting schedule attached to that. Okay. And what a vesting schedule means is the longer the employee is there, the more money they take. Okay, so like for example, we're talking about USD 305, they put $1,000 a year away for each one of their employees. That's tied to a 15-year vesting schedule. So if that employee leaves within the first 5 years, the school district retains that money. Okay, then it's 10% each year after that is what the employee gets. So if they're there for 15 years, they get to take 100% of whatever's put in that account. Okay? Just up the road, west of here, Sylvan, they have a retirement plan as well. Theirs is a matching style plan. Okay, matching style plan, again, very similar to a 401k. The employee puts in money, and then the school district will match that amount. So up there, or over there, it's $50 a month. Okay? So if the employee is for certified staff. Okay, so certified staff. So the employee puts in $50 a month, the employer is going to match that $50 a month. Theirs is an 8-year vesting schedule. Okay, so it's different. And that's just how they decided to do that. They also have a plan there for classified staff. Okay? And this is where you can, quote unquote, what they call in the 403B market as discriminate a little bit. Because in a 401k market, you have to abide by ERISA laws. And ERISA laws, I'm not going to go into it, but it's just laws that they have to abide by. You do not have to do that in a 403B. Okay? So certified staff gets $50 match, classified staff gets a $25 match. Okay? So that's how they do their plan. Same vesting schedule. But you can choose between two classifications on the amount of money that you're going to match for that classification. All right, so getting that out of the way to start, we help design a lot of plans all over the state, really. I was going to bring a list of the retirement plans that OFG, our broker-dealer, does, but just out of our office, I believe we have 12 different retirement plans that we help design, kind of in this area, stretching all the way from Manhattan, again to Sylvan, heading north to Minneapolis, and then south like McPherson, Augusta, those places. So it's something that we do. So when I was talking to Scott, we were trying to look at something and figure out a way, since the early retirement plan is leaving, as of right now in 18 months. Okay, what can we do to help replace that? Okay, so I'm going to pull this up. And this is going to be that tiny writing. Okay. All right. So first thing that we have to do when we do these retirement plans, when we start to try and develop a retirement plan for school districts, we got to look at, okay, what's the total cost going to be? Okay, what is our total cost? Because the most expensive part about putting in a new plan is that you're phasing out an old plan. Okay, and those payments don't go away, right? So if we look at it right now, this is what's currently on the books for the early retirement payout. Okay, you have 4 employees that are taking it right now, $6,000 for the first 2, $3,000 for the next 2. That leaves you with a total of $18,000. All right, I phased it all the way out. So the longest it's going to go, if these people are paid out, you know, God forbid nothing happens to them, but if they're paid out the remainder of the time. Now, what we got to look at now too is, since the early retirement plan is going away, we got to look at the potential employees that are now going to have the option to retire within that 18 months. Okay, so there's a total of 5 of them that if they wanted to go, they're still going, as I understand it, they're still going to be able to take that early retirement plan, right?
Yes.
So if everybody retired, your total liability, unfunded liability right now is $39,000. So if everybody left, that first year you're going to be paying $39,000, and then I extended it out all the way to 2026, which would be, it's actually going to be 2027. You're going to go in the 2027 year. If somebody retires at the end of that 18-month period, you have 1 more year of payout. That'll be that $21,000 right there. But this is the number that we focus on, right? Because this is your potential liability this next year, right? So a couple things that people do when they put in retirement plans. When we talk about phasing out an old plan, there's a couple ways to do it. Most of the time, when an employer or somebody or they're taking away an old retirement plan, they typically phase it out a little bit. Okay, so for example, in Apple, they're reducing what they're paying out to those employees over time. So it's not pulling the rug out from underneath anybody, but it's giving them the option to get a little bit of a payout at that time. Okay. Now, you guys know the budget, and you know the dollars and what needs to go. So I don't have to tell you that $40,000 is a lot of money, and $33,000. So one thing that you can do, you do have what's called a natural break, and this is what we look at in retirement plans when we look at what a natural break is. It's like, okay, so these are the employees that are close enough that, you know, may have been relying on that or some sort of a payout at that time. Then you have a break before you have anybody else that's going to be in that early retirement plan for quite a while, actually, in your guys' case. So with natural breaks, what you can do is you phase it out to that time. Then you can start to work on putting in a new plan, whatever style you want to do. When we do a phase out, and school districts can do it different. It's totally up to you, you know, how you want to do it, or even if you want to do a phase out, that's up to you. But if you did it early, a phase out, so like if you started in 2022 and you say, okay, this year we're going to allow, because you only got one going to be eligible to retire at that time in 2022, say if you retire, we'll do 20,000 instead of 30,000. Okay, so give them the option to again, you're reducing that down. And then that next year, 2023, you can say, okay, we'll do 15,000 because you got two more people who are potentially going to retire in that 2023 year. That's your eligible. That's who's eligible as of right now under that plan. So again, that's an option. That's an option. If you so choose, you can do something like that to phase out. Now, you got to remember, you're going to be paying this out, so it's not going to stop in 2023. Just maybe nobody else is eligible for that early retirement benefit after 2023, if you decide to do that. But you're still going to be paying out over a long period of time, right? So that 2023 then turns into 2028 before you're completely out of the early retirement plan. Okay? So does that make sense right there? How I have that written up for you guys? Okay. So we come over here. So this is your entire staff list. Okay, of certified staff and classified staff here. All right. Now I did a pretty simple, just a match, and to try and keep it, because when I was talking to Scott, we wanted to see if we could get it around 20,000 total as a budget is what we were looking at. So what we did is when we looked at it, we said, okay, why don't we do like an increase on a match or something like that? Okay. So if you look here at certified staff, if you do $40 and they match $40, what you're looking at total yearly cost is $14,880. Okay? As you bump that up, you know, so it goes to 45 that year after, and then $50 match. Again, this is just, when we do this, it's almost throwing darts to start, and then as you guys kind of discuss and want to move forward, with a different style plan, whether it's a matching plan, whether it's an employer-funded plan, so on and so forth, whatever that is, then we can start to narrow it down and really dig into the numbers. But I want to give you guys an idea on what those costs are. So, you know, depending on whenever you wanted to start it, again, if we're trying to keep it at 20,000, I mean, you got to look at your unfunded liability with that early retirement plan. It's probably not going to start right away. Because the most expensive part of the plan is, again, when you're phasing out, because you're still paying on an old plan, and you're starting a new plan. Okay? Now, if you remember, I said that there's a vesting schedule attached to those employer dollars. And I'm sorry, over here in the classified staff, just did a $25 match. Okay? So it gives you your monthly cost and your yearly cost here. So, again, if you remember, I said, okay, the employer retains some of that money, right? So for example, at USD 305, if an employer left or an employee left within the first 5 years, the employer retains all that money. So what happens to that money? That money goes into what's called a forfeiture account. And what that forfeiture account is used to is to offset future costs of the plan. Okay? Meaning that the employer can use that for those employer matching dollars. Right? So if you have $10,000 in your account, you can fund part of your yearly cost, okay? Which in turn drives down what you're spending on a plan, okay? Does that make sense? So those employer dollars can go to offset those future costs is what it does. And I have that right here, okay? So this is going to be the certified. I did one for certified and classified, all right? So first looking at it, I just did a $50 match, 10-year vesting schedule. Now you can determine what you want your vesting schedule to be. Doesn't have to be set in stone. Like I said, there's 15 years, there's 8 years, there's 6 years. There's everywhere in between. There's cliff vesting. Bueller does a cliff vesting, which means if you're there for 10 years, you don't get any of the money until you're there for 10 years. And if you're there for 10 years, you get 100% of the account value. Okay, so you can do that too. That's designed kind of like Capers. Capers has a 5-year cliff vesting, right? So this yearly forfeiture here. So what I have over here is the employer, certified staff, $50 match, 10-year vesting, 10% each year. Very simple. $50. I did a rough, 6% is probably low, but I don't want to promise the world that you're going to get a 10-year, 10% return on your investments because you can't guarantee it. Okay, so it's not guaranteed, but it's a fairly conservative number to look at when we're trying to diagnose the the cost and the potential benefit of that account. So $600 for the employee, $600 for the employer. Employee value is $616. Same thing with the employer value. So the total value of the account is $12,000. What's the yearly forfeiture? The yearly forfeiture is going to be $550 because the employee retains 10% of that. The employer is going to retain 90% of the employer dollars, right? Not the employee dollars. The employee will always keep their own dollars because they're 100% vested day one. The vesting schedule comes into play just on those employer dollars. All right, so you can kind of see down here, as this money, as that account starts to build, so do those forfeiture dollars if they leave. Okay? So, what does the employee retain? I always like to show employees this too, because this can show you the power of compounding, investments, right? So an employee is going to make up over a 15-year period with a 6% return on that. They're going to be about $30,000, which puts you right at what your early retirement would be at that time. And over that time period, the employer has put in significantly less than what they would have paid out in the early retirement plan, right? Because you're only doing $600 a year. Okay? So that's the idea behind retirement plans and behind matching plans or even employer-funded plans, really. Is that forfeiture dollars eventually, now it's never going to fully fund your retirement plan. It'll never do it. But if you could free up, 4 or 5 months is just typically on average what we see, the employers being able to pay out on the employer 4 to 5 months worth of expenses. That's going to free up some dollars for you. But it takes a little while to get there. And the thing with Lincoln too is that you guys got pretty good longevity, out of your teachers. So don't ever bank on the forfeiture dollars, but it can help. It can help. I think your biggest benefit of going to a matching style plan or even an employer-funded plan is that, number one, you're spreading the cost out over a longer period of time that the employer is putting those dollars in. So you're not having to pay it out in 5 years. You can, again, split that up over 15 years to free up some of your budget. And the other thing, too, is what it really helps with that we see is recruitment of teachers. Recruitment of teachers, we do see that a lot. Even in the private world, if there's a good benefit, on a job, most likely you're going to take that job or at least highly consider it. So a lot of schools will use it as a recruitment tool, saying that they have a matching plan or some type of retirement plan that they have in place for their employees. I will say we are seeing a lot in the state, even across the nation, we're seeing a lot more of the matching style plans come into play than employer-funded plans. They're just starting to transition that way a little bit. Main reason for that is employers like to have the employee to put a little bit of skin in the game. And to take their retirement a little bit more serious. In an employer-funded plan, typically your voluntary contributions is about 20–25%. In a matching style plan, you're going to have potentially 95 and above percent participation from the employee, just because they have to put that money in order to get it. So those are some things to consider. When you're starting to think about a retirement plan and putting one in. Another thing that there are ways that you can do it and set it up where you're somewhat pre-funding. So let's say, for an example, you do decide to put in some type of that early retirement benefit, maybe you don't do the 30,000, but you put 20,000 in, or do 20,000, or whatever you guys decide to do, if you decide to do anything, is that you can kind of help pre-fund that. So what we'll see schools do is for those employees that are closer to retirement, they may do a higher match for them. So again, if it's like a 4-to-1 match or something like that for those people who are closer, you're pre-funding those dollars, okay? I will give you an example, and I can go over all examples that we have that we put into place, but a good one that I always like to look at is Chapman. We helped design their plan there. They do a $50 match, is what they do. Theirs is a 15-year vesting schedule. But what they did is they split it up into 4 groups, okay? So group number 1 was within 5 years of retirement. Group number 2 was in 6 to 10 years. Group number 3 was, I think it was 10 to 15. And then anybody after that 15-year, it is just a 1-to-1 match, okay? So group number 1 had a one-time irrevocable option to either stay in the old plan or to move to the new plan, okay? What happens in those early retirement benefits is that if you really like a teacher, the whole reason why they started those early retirement plans was when you had an employee that had a lot of longevity, their salary was pretty high, right? So what they did to entice them to go out was say, okay, we'll pay you this early retirement benefit, then we can replace that teacher with a lesser salary. So that's why they originally started those. Now, if you have a teacher that you really like and you want to keep them, they have a tough decision to make, saying, okay, either I'm going to forego some of the money of the early retirement plan if I work longer than 60. I'm going to give up some of that money, or I leave and take the early retirement benefit. Okay, so one thing that the 403B does, like a matching plan or even an employer-funded plan, is it's not going to harm the teacher if they decide to stay longer past that early retirement benefit. Okay, because they're going to retain some of the money. They're going to retain some of the money in the plan. So that's one thing that allows you to do, is to hold on to teachers too. So not just as a recruitment tool, but allows you to hold on to teachers that have put in their time and service for the school district as well. So Chapman, back to Chapman, and then I'll kind of open up the floor for questions, and you guys can, as many questions as you have, you can send them my way. So Chapman, how they did it, again, it was a one-time irrevocable option to either stay in the old plan or move to the new plan. One time, okay? So they can't go back and change it. They get one time to say, I'm either going to stay in the old plan or I'm going to do the matching plan. So that group number 1, what they were allowed to do, what they did is they did a 4-to-1 match, $50. So employer was putting in $200, employee was putting in $50. And the reason they did that is because they wanted to try and get them as close to that early retirement benefit as possible. Okay, they were never going to get to that point, but they were going to try and help those people who were closer, who were maybe expecting that early retirement benefit, or at least a portion of it. Okay. Group number 2 was a 3-to-1 match. Okay, that was in that 6 to 10 years. Now, typically, I will tell you that there, and this is just going to be brutally honest with you, somebody will always get hurt when you change a plan. It just happens. Okay, so you got to be aware of that. Okay, not everybody is going to come out like roses. Okay, it just happens when you're trying to put something in and trying to take something out. Okay, so you just got to be aware of that. There's always a group that might not get quite to where they could have been with the early retirement plan. So you just got to be aware of that. But that group number 2 was a 3-to-1 match. Okay, so again, they were trying to get them close to that early retirement benefit as possible. And they did that for 10 years. Now, after that 5 years, after the 5 years, that group went to a 1-to-1 match. Okay, so you don't continue that 200 match on. you know, indefinitely, eventually it goes back to that one-to-one match, okay? And you, again, you can design it however you want to. So group 2, after that 10 years, boom, back to the one-to-one match. So they were going back to the $50 match, if they stayed longer than that. Group number 3 was a 2-to-1 match. So they just did $100 for every $50. After that was over, back to the one-to-one match, and then anybody after that is in that one-to-one match, okay? The reason they did a 15-year vesting schedule is because some of their natural breaks fell in between some of those groups, so to try and get them, again, as close to that early retirement plan as possible, they just decided to go with a 15-year phase out. So at the end of 15 years, they're going to be out of that early retirement plan, okay? So it's not quick. It takes a while to get out of them, but that's what they decided to do there. That's how they decided to do their plan. Any questions right now that you have? Scott, anything you want to add?
No, we've spent several hours together trying to work this, some idea to present to you. And I don't think that we're at a point where we have something firm, but I wanted George to be able to come out to just give you some information as we continue to have the conversations.
And again, like I said at the very beginning, the 403B, when you design a plan, or when you try and design a plan, and I'll come to as many of these meetings as you want me to talk about it, you know, if you get to that point. But kind of looking at the numbers and the budget, I don't know if you're quite yet to the point where a matching plan or some type of employer-funded plan would work right now, based on the budget that I kind of talked with Scott about, that you're looking at. But you could start to kick that can a little bit down the road and say, okay, what's our number one goal? Our number one goal is to get out of this unfunded liability that we have on that early retirement plan, right? That's why you voted out of it, okay? So that was the number one goal. So we got all this money on the books that we don't have funded right now. It's a liability, right? Because you don't know how many people are going to retire and when they're going to retire, okay? So if that's goal number one, boom, let's do it. Let's figure out a way to get out of that old retirement plan. If it's a phase out, you know, if it takes a little while to get out of it, then it takes a little while to get out of it, okay? Then, after that, you know, you say, okay, now I feel like we're in a pretty manageable position right now, you know, getting out of that early retirement plan. Now let's start to look on developing a plan for our employees. I will tell you, you will see more of the, and we're putting in a lot more of these matching plans. And a lot of the schools that are doing it are really focused. I don't want to say they're focusing because they're not negating anybody, but the people who are, the teachers who are coming in and are in CAPERS Tier 3, that's a totally different benefit than CAPERS Tier 1 and Tier 2, totally different benefit, okay? So what these matching plans or retirement plans are doing is helping those younger employees, you know, offset some of the stuff that they're giving up, you know, by not being a CAPERS Tier 1 or Tier 2. So that is a big benefit for new teachers, big benefit for new teachers. And I think what you'll see is with these plans, and again, schools are using them as recruitment tools, but those younger teachers like to see that. If they understand anything about CAPERS and CAPERS Tier 3, CAPERS is a great benefit. It really is. It's a fantastic benefit, but they're giving up a lot more than what Tier 1 and Tier 2 is. So that can help offset some of that gap that they potentially could have there.
Just one quick question.
Yeah.
When it comes to this 403B, does the employee have options in regards to where to invest it?
Absolutely.
Whether to have more aggressive?
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of like the 401k, there's platforms that you can use. So the ones we put in, it's called a multi-vendor platform, meaning that the last thing that I want to do as an advisor, if I come in here And the teacher's got a really good relationship with their advisor, whether it's like Waddell and Reed or something like that, and they got a really good relationship with them. On the voluntary side, there's a list of companies that you guys can decide to use if you want them to be in the platform. Okay, so like Waddell and Reed, well, whoever you want, Ameriprise, different, you can do that. Now, and security benefit is who we use. Now, the employer dollars have to go to a single vendor. Okay, the reason they have to go to a single vendor is because that vendor is going to be doing the vesting. So they're watching the vesting on that. So, like we use security benefit, for example, so all employer dollars go, in the case when we put in the retirement plan, all the employer dollars go to security benefit. Okay? The employee gets to choose where they want to do it, as long as it's a part of the approved provider list. So to your question, that was a long way around kind of explaining it, but yes, there's the platform that we typically use. There's about 85 different mutual funds. There's target dated funds in there, and there's different allocation options. So if they want a conservative, moderately conservative, moderate, aggressive, those are options as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Anybody else have any questions for me? Okay, no problem. And I should have grabbed it, I think I might have the business card in here. I can pass them out. So if you guys come up with questions, if something hits you in the middle of the night, like, hey, what happens if we decide to do this? I'm gonna give you my card. I think I have some in there. Great business practice, huh? So you guys can reach out to me anytime to ask questions if you have them. All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Scott, you need to do that, if you want to show me.
I will for my report, but not yet.
Okay, I'll leave mine.
We'll just have to switch it to HDMI too.
If there's extra papers too, okay.
Thank you. Right. Superintendent, we have early release concept.
Yeah, and I would like to point out, just to jump back to Jordan's thing, one of the strategies of that sort of a model is that we have something that we can budget for with no surprises.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of unknowns, and this would give us knowns to try to manage. The next thing on the agenda is this early release concept, and I know I've talked to you about it before. Does that sound okay, like speaker-wise? Because I'm trying to make sure everybody can hear. I think I've told you before that we finished our 5-year KISA cycle in Dr. Betty's year, and we did receive our accreditation. So we do have to start that 5-year cycle over again. I did apply for a waiver for this year because we didn't really know what COVID was going to do with staffing and learning and buildings and everything else. So I did apply for the waiver, and we don't have to do anything but give a report in April. However, next year, we will be right back into the 5-year cycle. The other thing that's really important right now, and especially what I will optimistically call post-COVID, is student evaluation of learning, multi-tiered support system, MTSS, so that if there is any remediation that needs to take place, we need to address that, and hopefully this spring we'll have some data that starts giving us an idea of where we are. I would say again, with great gratitude, we have not had a long-term remote learning situation, a long-term hybrid situation. We have been able to have students in classrooms, and as we look at this data, I think it will be very interesting because there's so many effects on student achievement, and we constantly talk about social emotional, about stress that students are under, the worries, the uncertainty, and everything else. So moving forward, the data will be quite fascinating to me, and I think to everybody. However, back to the early release concept. What I am asking is the board to consider, and this is information only, next year, in order for us to have a solid and effective MTSS program, where we intentionally have staff time to evaluate student performance, to look for areas that they may need support, and then have time for them to go to those areas of support. A true MTSS system has a very specific time in the day where kids go to the areas that they need support or enrichment in. It's built into the schedule. But if you don't have time to evaluate if a student is moving out of a support into an enrichment, if they're in a learning structure, or if they're in a if they have shown mastery and they're in an enrichment, if you don't have staff time to have those discussions, you can't really effectively have an MTSS program. It's a big part of the state's expectation. So, the model that I'm proposing is that Wednesday will be an early release day. It's a system that I've been accustomed to for the last 5 years. An hour prior to the end of day is the end of day for students. Faculty stay under contract for that hour, and that is the time when we can have meaningful MTSS, we can have KISA time, we could have faculty meetings, we could have professional development. But if we don't have that time, we can't do any of that. And this year, I think, was a great example as we front-loaded all of our PD because we really didn't know what we were going to get into. We have no professional development this year. April 19th, we'll have a half-a-day PD and a half-a-day with Dr. Watson. This spring, correct me if I'm wrong, administrators, but this spring semester, that will be our only PD, 1/2 of a day, to give our staff tools to be more effective in the classroom. And that's only because we had to front load those days. We talked about this at the district leadership team meeting. There was concern brought up about the Wednesday, I don't know the technical term for it, so I'm just going to say the Wednesday church school. I talked to a member of the Board of Education for the church, and there was an elder meeting, and there was no concern if we go to an early release on Wednesday. So I have received no pushback from that organization, and I just feel it's very, very important, if we strive for excellence in learning, that we have the time to plan for that excellence. It doesn't happen accidentally. And I think this time can be very intentional, and it can be very structured, and it can be very goal-oriented. So that's kind of the concept. The buses would run early. There's always comments about what do the athletes do? Well, we have an early release. They'll have to hang around for practice because staff coaches need to be a part of this process. Teacher coaches are teachers first, and we don't go coach it an hour before. We take care of our educational commitment, and then we do extracurricular activities. The goal, in my mind, is to be excellent in everything we do. And we do a great job teaching our kids. Having this time would allow us to do even more and even better. So that's kind of the thing. It becomes a culture of the district, and it becomes the norm on Wednesday afternoons. That being said, if you have any questions or concerns,
It's every Wednesday afternoon?
every Wednesday.
Every Wednesday.
And just 1 hour, I like that.
Okay, for some reason I thought it was once a month, so I was confused, okay.
Now that consistency and with the expectations that come with it, MTSS is not a once-a-month conversation. the professional development ongoing, the faculty meetings. It can all be done on a contract day, and we're not asking people to stay after contract hours or come in early. So that sort of a structure, in my experience, I've found to be very effective.
I like the idea of it being structured the same day every single week. Teachers, parents, everyone will be used to it. It'll be the same day every single week. Consistency.
So at some point in time, I would like to put this on the agenda as an action item. And that we have, or if it's not an action item, at least the support of the board for the administrators to move to this model.
Right. Moving on.
Moving on, I'll pull the mic back up.
Yeah, it's still you.
So, this was kind of some new information this year on the gym floors, new to me anyway. I didn't understand the degree of maintenance that goes into a wooden gymnasium floor. The recommendation is that they be finished, not the sand down, but re-varnished or whatever you want to call it, re-polyurethane or whatever, every year for longevity. So the company that did our high school gym floor, junior high school gym floor, got a hold of me and said their calendar's filling up, and they wanted to know about the finish on the junior senior high. Of course, I'm like, it just got done, it should be fine. But this is an ongoing maintenance thing, so that we can get the most life out of it. So really on the addendums, the second page is the price. Well, that's not really the price. It would be $800 higher than this price. It'd be about $2,900 to $3,000 to put another layer of finish down on the junior high, senior high gymnasium. The first page, we toured the elementary school. And if you've been in both of them, you can notice this huge color difference. The high school gym is very bright and light colored. The LES gymnasium is a much darker, yellowed looking finish. And he said that that's because it hasn't been sanded and refinished in quite some time. It has layer after layer after layer of finish on top of that gymnasium. So the recommendation was that should be taken down. The number is up at the top, $14,230. From my research, it looked like we paid about $18,000 for the high school. The elementary gymnasium is about 3,000 square feet smaller, is how we measured it, so that's why it's cheaper. So what we get on the high school, if we would commit to the LES gym being refinished, that's why the high school is only $2,100. They gave an $800 knockoff. Since they're going to be in town, they'd knock them both out at the same time. If we do not refinish LES, he said, please don't put another overcoat on it, because you're going to get to a point where it's going to be very, very difficult to sand down. We did look at how thick the wood was, and there is enough wood left for another sanding, but there comes a point where everything has to be replaced. I will tell you, I don't think we can afford $14,000 to sand that floor down right now. There's too many unknowns. So unfortunately, I would forego, per their recommendation, doing even an overcoat of any more finish on it. And the other thing that I was telling the administrators, what we really have to be wary of is, we need some space between these projects. You know, if we get into a cycle where we have to sand both gyms 2 years in a row, that's a significant expense, boom, boom. So if we can get through LES's gym and get a little span between the two, that recurring expense won't be quite so hard to swallow. So I just wanted you to see that. I wanted you to give you information on gym floor life, because I didn't know anything about it. It's all a learning experience for me on this ongoing preventive maintenance thing. But with the beauty of the investment of the high school floor, I will have to find $3,000 so that we can protect that thing. It is gorgeous. And if you ever want to see the comparison, in a basketball game where the bleachers are pulled out, look where they couldn't sand because the bleachers were compressed. And if you just, it's just a line that's as clear as can be. And you'll see, oh, well, that's what the elementary school gym looks like now, and look what the refinished floor. It's beautiful, and we've gotta take care of it. They didn't do a wood check on the high school. I don't know how many sandings are left there. Well, I'll tell you what, when that has to be replaced, that's gonna be significant. And so everything that I'm trying to do is to prepare for the future. You cannot not have a gym. English is challenging. So we have to be aware of what needs to happen 5 and 6 years down the road so that we can make plans for that now. Just wanted you to be aware of information. And in 5 years, it's not gonna be any cheaper.
So just out of curiosity, to re-sand it, how often do they normally recommend to have it re-sanded?
Resand, they told me about every 5 years.
5 years, we have one more sanding on elementary school. Did he give?
Oh, you mean, I thought you mean a refinish, or how much the wood will do when it's replaced?
No, as far as how often you have to re-sand it down to the wood.
Oh, yeah.
Every 5 years. So, 2,000 or 3,000 a year for the coating, and then every 5 years, gotta refinish the whole thing for 18, 20 grand.
Yep.
And we got one more sanding at elementary, and projecting for the future, because I'm looking ahead.
At some time, the elementary's gonna need new wood.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And
Yep. Maybe in 8 to 10 years. We stretch and we stretch.
look at these 5 years, we might wanna look into what it cost might be on something like that, just to have it on the books. 'Cause that's gonna be
This is why we really need to focus on rebuilding our funds. We need to not end the year with no money to roll over into capital outlay. We started this year with $75,000 in capital outlay. That wouldn't do a gym floor. That's how low that fund is, and we've got to get in a position where we're planning for this future. And that means, just like at home, if you're saving for something, we have got to put money in our capital outlay account to prepare for the upcoming things, because there's a lot of them.
Put that on your list that you're making us,
Yes.
of the expenses in the upcoming, yes. Okay, with that, do we need to approve the high school floor?
Well, it's under $10,000 for the refinish, so it doesn't take board action. I made that an information action in case somebody really wanted to advocate for the elementary.
No.
But I don't think it's a good idea right now, financially.
In the past, does anybody know how often we re-coated floors?
Mrs. Walter, do you know the last time, was the high school done within the 5 years that you've been in the?
Just the research for like coating it, putting a new coat on, I think that, I
When was
thought
the
it was
last
there.
time it was sanded, do you
Oh,
remember
I
any
don't know.
recollection?
I don't know. It's been refinished almost every year, I think.
Reapply.
Yeah,
Not painted.
but not painted. This is the first, I don't remember how long it's been since it was built. Yeah, maybe.
Grade school's been done at least once since I've.
Yeah, did they pick up the liquor?
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
Thank you, just, seems that,
I don't remember.
Should they-
seems like we ought to be able to go 2 years, but I don't know.
I mean, with the coating, with the top?
Yes.
Yeah. It's a lot of wear and tear.
Used a lot.
In a normal school year, when you have all the other entities that want to use the facilities, it just creates wear and tear.
Oh, yeah.
And you don't have a teacher or anybody supervising to prevent as much damage as possible with, appropriate shoes, equipment going across the floor, so.
Great, thank you. Any more discussion? Okay, so next
I wanted to update you when I wrote my principal's report. We were closing in on our Great Kindness Challenge. Students finished up at 721 acts of kindness. So not only did they meet their 500 goal, they by far exceeded that, and they were able to do several fun items at the school. Mrs. Pitt had popcorn and drinks and all sorts of fun items. So we really wanted to just thank you for that. We will look forward to doing that again next year and increasing that goal. And I just publicly want to thank everybody in the community that responded, because it has been a wonderful thing, definitely in this community. And Mrs. Batacek worked really hard to pull all of that together as our point person on that project. So I just wanted to say thank you for that. Another thing that we celebrated on Friday, which is really hard to believe, if you would have told me this in June, I wouldn't have believed you. We hit our 100th day of school Friday, so we got to celebrate that as well. And again, I just want to say, 6 months ago, if you would have told me we would have hit 100 days of in-person school, I wouldn't have believed it. But we worked really hard and we've made it there, so.
I'd like to add to that attendance paragraph. I think that's fascinating if you've had a chance to read it.
Yeah.
February 3rd this year, we had 1 student absent due to illness. Last year, we had 17. I just want to give a huge shout out to our teachers who are sanitizing, to our custodial staff who are cleaning and fogging. I think in all of our health aspects, it's made a monstrous difference in our attendance, which keeps kids in the classroom and keeps kids learning. So I just thought that was an interesting little piece of data. I was really glad she included that for you.
And I track that data every day because both Mrs. Walter and I do COVID data to Kansas Department of Health and Environment. And every day that I look at that number, I can easily click on Power School and see what we had the year prior, so.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. Mrs. Walter?
Yes, I do have a change I'd like to note. I put in there that the wrestling senior night will be on Thursday at the junior high Leopard Scramble. We talked to our senior wrestler and he would rather do it Friday with the basketball and the cheerleaders. So the wrestling senior night will be the same night as the basketball senior night and the cheerleader senior night, which is on Friday, February 19th. And I kind of went through, kind of outlined, or you'd asked kind of to be a little more specific about what I was requesting last month about the track meets and going to Tesket. So I kind of gave a little plan or an outline of what what my request would be for the junior high track meet and for the high school track meet, and what compensation we could maybe possibly give teachers if you guys would agree. And so I didn't know if you guys had any questions on that part of my board report. Did it make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Thank you. Definitely clearer picture.
We are able to do an earlier start date for the junior high track meet, but we're not able to do an earlier start time for the high school. So that's why the high school has to start at 3, and we could start the junior high at 1:30 and try to get done sooner. That's all we got.
Thank you. Any questions? All right, thank you. Moving on, Superintendent Report.
Do the HDMI too. Shut that one here on the lights off, please.
Which one do you?
That one off up there. You might want to get a snack or think about a free break.
Go.
Okay, I'll try to get to where everybody can hear me. I got several slides to share with you. One is an update on the track. Per Mid-America's request, Mr. Pittenger and I cut a core sample out of that thing. Unfortunately, all we found was more bad news. There is 8 inches of asphalt in 3 distinct layers going down to just a dirt bed. So nothing worked out well on our discovery. That is much more than they would have anticipated excavating as far as asphalt, and there is no bed that they could put anything new down on. So the bids have gone back up over $800,000. I share these pictures with them. So to be honest with you, this project's dead in the water. Unless there is just some major benefactor donor, this is an impossibility. It simply is an impossibility to try to make this project happen. I have had some conversation with these companies about what would it cost to mill maybe the top couple of inches off, seal the cracks that are there, and some of those are significant. If you remember the pictures I showed you, inch and a half cracks, and put a top coat of asphalt on it with no striping and turn it into simply an activity track. But I fear that that cost will still exceed $150,000, and that just, in my mind, it just can't be a priority right now. We'll have to come to terms with the fact that at some point we're going to have to evaluate that beat-up rubber track and decide when that track needs to be closed, period. We don't want anybody injured on it. For track season, we're going to try to find segments of that track that the track team can use. If we can find 60 yards without significant damage, maybe that's where they can set some hurdles up. If we can find any space for relay handoffs. Otherwise, our track team is going to be practicing on the football practice field. The liability is just too great with the damage that's on that track. The high school parking lot, it was brought to our attention how bad a shape it was in, so I just thought we better get an idea of what that's going to take. A company came out. Our biggest problem is it doesn't drain, and there's pools of water that freeze and thaw, and a freeze-thaw cycle on asphalt is horrible. I can't find any information on the last time it was sealed to try to keep water out. This is at the northeast side of the student, I guess it'd be the northwest of the student parking lot, but this is where students would drive out into that puddle. The road is so damaged that they have started making their own road across the grass and not drive through it. This is the opposite end in front of the library, and this is kind of amazing because not only does it pool water here, but it pools water here, and this is what I call a riprap ditch. It's just rough rock, except it goes uphill before it goes downhill, which is an interesting slope problem. This is that exact same site dry, and it just continues to erode and decay, especially given our temperatures right now. That's a sheet of ice. It's popping more asphalt off. Every year we get more and more damage. Here's some other damage pictures. Nothing sealed, the water's getting under there, and it's continuing to degrade. So the company that came out, these are some pictures of what they proposed. This is that corner where the students are making a new road right across here. They're proposing that that becomes asphalt going up to, concrete going up to the asphalt. And that way they feel they can better control the slope and the drainage. This is down at that other end where it goes uphill before it goes downhill, and they would recommend that we put concrete there as well. Well, let me go back to that. But $71,000. Every time we turn around, it's a big bill. So part of that strategic plan on facilities is, what do we tackle first? What can we afford to tackle first? And at what point in time are we going to get to this? Or we're just going to end up with a gravel parking lot that's hard to drive over out there. It's already just as rough as it can be on the main thoroughfare. Most of the student parking can just be sealed and it would be okay, but where the main traffic flows are and where these problems areas are, they are simply, again, like a lot of our other issues, going to get worse and worse over time until it's finally addressed. So, wanted to share that with you. This is an interesting project. The students approached Mrs. Flynn with an idea to do something with the main restrooms at the high school that are right off of the commons. The place where most people go for an athletic event in the gymnasium or any kind of things that happen in the commons area. It was brought to her attention because the students are embarrassed by the way they look. I've not been in them, I mean I have now, but I had not been in them, so we took a tour of those. I would like to make this statement. You know, a high school is typically the flagship of a community. Most things happen at a high school. The most people attend things at a high school. And I have to tell you, I was appalled at this rust, at this decaying sheetrock, at this rotted sheetrock, and that's after it has been cleaned. And this is where our patrons go, and this is where our visitors go. And I will tell you, we may have older buildings, but by God, they don't have to look old. And we need to take care of these facilities and have some pride and have some expectation. If we're going to be excellent in everything we do, then doggone it, we better be excellent in taking care of our facilities that represent this school district. I wouldn't have that in my home. And yet, surrounding communities and our patrons go in there, and this is what they see. And this represents, everything about our building represents Lincoln. So, that being said, we are working on projects. I have 2 contractors that have looked at this. I don't know if it should be, but this is a higher priority to me than that parking lot. People can drive over a rough road, but this is an embarrassment to me. So, we're going to get some bids. My understanding is this epoxy floor used to be a beautiful bright blue, and now it's green. You can't see it in these pictures. But it is green and it is gross. And this sort of stuff here drives me crazy. When we take pride in our work, we don't paint outside the lines. So, what we're doing is getting bids from a couple of contractors. I'm afraid it's going to be high. We need to pull everything off the walls. We want to put tile 6 feet high so it's easy to clean, and we don't have these drywall rot issues from water. We'll have to replace drywall, and then we would like to re-epoxy the floors. Student organizations are going to come together and see how much money they can take out of their activity accounts to put toward this project. I have a commercial tile saw, and I've laid thousands of square feet of tile. If we have to, I will get a team together and we'll tile this thing this summer if I can afford to have the plumbing done and the floor done. So, and new dividers.
Yeah.
And they make really rigid and rugged plastic ones now that don't have these issues over time. Now, you can tell this is the boys' restroom. Boys are a little hard on things. I'd show you pictures of the girls' restroom, but it's really in pretty decent shape. We might look at just the wall-mounted sinks too, like is in the girls' restroom, and not have that countertop kind of a concept. You know, our other issue is the leaky roof at LES. I went up there with Mr. Pittiger and Geiser Roofing, and we walked around when it was nice weather last week. And there is a lot of hail damage still up on that roof from this previous hailstorm that was here before me. Geiser said sometimes it can take a year before those dings show up. So we walked around. He thinks we might be able to keep that thing alive for another 5 years. A preventive maintenance program, I'm waiting on a document from him to explain what the cost of that is. But that would entail them every year power washing that roof, looking for damaged areas and fixing them every summer. Right now, well, I took the drone over there this morning. When we went up there, unfortunately snow covered a lot of it. When we went up there, we had a can of orange paint, and everywhere that we saw cracks or holes, we circled them. They came out Friday of last week when it was nice with their roofing team, and they walked the entire roof and circled the damage. So this morning, I went over just to try to get some pictures of the orange paint of the hole. I mean, you look right there, those are holes in the roof. It's no wonder we have leaks down through the building. That's all damage, that's all damage, that's all damage, and that's damage. The circles that we did were under the snow. So that's an ongoing issue, you know, but part of the problem is there is an engineered sloped foam up there that they put under that membrane that's supposed to divert water. Well, if that gets water saturated, then that has to be replaced. So, the longer we wait, the more problems we're gonna have under that membrane. It's kind of maybe a bad analogy, but it's really just like a pool liner, a vinyl pool liner that's up there with foam underneath it. There are some breathing, I don't know what you'd want to call them, some breathing vents that kind of allow air to get under it, but they're just here and there. They don't allow it to really air out. So everywhere there's a hole and that stuff's getting wet, we have no idea what's going under that pool, what's going on under that pool liner, whether that insulation might get moldy, whether it's just holding moisture and soaking into the top structure of the building. But there's some significant issues that we're gonna work to try to get a plan together with this roofing company.
Just refresh my memory here, but wasn't that the roof we had an insurance company come up and look at after the hail, and they said there was no damage?
And it was amazing, even the roofing guy said, they put a new roof on the gym for hail damage. How could the roof 4 feet from it and 6 feet lower not have the same hail damage? He said the first time they fixed it, I think they fixed 175 hail damaged spots. My numbers may be off, and maybe the second time was 75 more, and they just continue to pop up. And what's weird on this, on the hail damage, as it pops up, you can see where it is because it's this circular spider web. It's not a split, like something hard hit it and it's cracked open. It's this bizarre circular spider web. And he has no idea why that roof wasn't replaced with the gymnasium roof. But be that as it may, here we are, and we have to come up with a solution.
Were they present with the insurance company there too to inspect the roof? Or was that just the
I don't
insurance
know
company
that.
was here? Is there any way we can contact the insurance company, or is it beyond the time?
I remember at the time they told us that there would be more damage that would occur in the summer in the heat. And then someone probably should have went back and looked at it at that time.
I guess to jump back on one more thing, the bathroom, boys' bathroom, is there a reason why we don't have doors on the stalls?
They've typically been removed,
I'm just asking.
I mean, kicked off or torn down or whatever else. There used to be, is what I was told.
Yes, that is true. And this has been probably over 10 years, 15 years ago when they were removed because the boys kept tearing them off. So then they tried shower curtains, and then the boys would tear the shower curtains off, so they just took them off altogether. And then they've just never been replaced since then.
Okay. It's just a thought.
No, yeah, I know. It's been brought to my attention a lot. And asked that question, why don't we have doors on?
Well, because they ripped them off. They wanted doors, they should have left them on.
So
Especially when you have guests coming in, and I know I walk in the bathroom a day or two, and there's a teenager sitting there in front of me, and oops, sorry. Okay.
there is the handicap song about this, then the back does have a door on it. Hey, just a big shout out to my 6 daughters. So let's end something on some good news. SR2 funding, well, semi-good news. SR2 funding. We did get a number for us, $243,000. There are 15 itemized areas that you can spend this money on. Air quality is one of them, remediation, curriculum, assessment tools, things like that. Anything, it has to be kind of COVID-y, kind of a concept. The numbers, I just got some information today. That number on the gym HVAC needs to go to about $115,000. The curriculum updates, the progress monitoring, and a mechanized curtain at LES, those are all pretty solid right now. That doesn't equal $243,000. So we have, the district has until September of 2023 to spend this money, so there's not a huge rush. The first thing that we're going to do is start purchasing curriculum and get some of that updated. We have some curriculum that dates back to the mid-90s, so that's an easy win and an easy sell to the feds for the use of the money. So I know the administrators have been working very hard finding resources. We have a quote for a social studies curriculum that we're ready to pull the trigger on. This money isn't available until March 1, so we do have to wait. We're just taking this time to make some good plans. Looking again, just like everything else, how can we spend these dollars so that they have the most legs for the district and last a long time? The good news about having until September 23 for this is we don't buy all curriculum in 1 year, and then when it's out of date, we have to buy everything again. We can span some things. Again, kind of like the gym floors have this expense spread out so that it doesn't hit us all at once. I'm really excited about this opportunity because these are things that we couldn't envision spending money on. I don't know, but in the future that I can see, we would never have $115,000 to correct that HVAC problem in the gym. I don't know that we could swing $80,000 for curriculum in the next 3 to 4 years. So for Lincoln USD 298, this is perfect timing. This year with, and even last spring with CARES, with Spark, with SR2 money, the goose has laid a golden egg for us, and we need to take advantage of every opportunity to spend this as wisely as possible so that the benefits last as long as possible. And that's very exciting for us. They are talking about an SR3 coming through under the Biden administration. So there may be even more funding, which then we can look at more HVAC units possibly on the high school and cycle those through, just like we've talked about doing strategically before. Okay. That's it for the slideshow. However, I told you this was going to be long. I have so much information for you, and it's so important. We had a legislative update with Jim Porter, the President of the State Board of Education. I was going to read you this Capitol Chatter letter, but I won't. I will just give you a synopsis of it. The election in Kansas was not favorable for education. The Republicans that got elected were not moderates, and there is already talk of things happening in education won't be positive. We don't have a lot of friends on the Republican side of the aisle now. Some of the things that they're talking about is diverting public tax dollars to private schools, whether they're accredited or non-accredited, which will take money away from public schools. And the concerning part of this is that it has the votes to pass in both chambers, and it has the votes to override a governor's veto. So chances are this voucher concept will come to fruition, and we don't know financially what effect that's going to have on us. The Gannon case set student funding, FTE base aid for the next few years, but that can change. That can change. Another thing that's very concerning to me, safety-wise, and this doesn't have anything really to do with us, but maybe DS, I didn't realize, you know the bus arms that stop people? There are over 1,000 violations per day of that. So there is a bill that's gonna provide cameras, it's gonna pay for cameras to be installed that will be used for ticketing the vehicle's owners that violate the bus arms. We've experienced, I believe he said only one death by a bus arm violation, but some states have seen quite a significant issue with safety. And then, as positive as SR2 funding is, let me share this information with you. Legislators have already been discussing reducing state aid based on federal funding like SR2. If they do that, if they start messing with the Gannon settlement and try to reduce, like say, we spend $115,000 on HVAC and they reduce our aid by $115,000, you know what position that will put us in. A very, very difficult position. So the State Board of Education is saying if they do that, lawsuits will fly. But there will be a period of time for those to be settled out. So I have talked with many people in Topeka. I'm very concerned about moving too fast with this SR2 money. We can't risk the liability of a reduction in state aid. So even though I said it will become available March 1, I'm moving forward very cautiously. I reached out to our state representative and the state senator. I'm waiting to have a conversation with them and see what the pulse is in the House and the Senate, and is this something that's really going to be considered, or is this just political talk? And until I get really comfortable with the feeling that they will not reduce our state aid, then I'm going to have to sit on SR2 for a while, because we simply cannot take the risk. The problem is this: if they reduce state funding based on SR2 funding, we're already losing almost $72,000 in funding next year because of our student count, and it's cycling through that 3-year average. So we're already losing $72,000. We can't afford anything else. So, just to let you know, on the bright side, if you like cold weather, it certainly is your cup of tea right now. I will tell you this, as much as I am concerned about this, I truly believe that we'll be able to figure out a plan. It just needs to be well thought out and move slow on, and we'll be able to get through whatever scare on funding we have, whatever scare on diverting of tax dollars for education to accredited and unaccredited schools. We'll figure this out. I just am an old optimist, I guess. And so the strategy is going to be plan, plan, plan. And that's where we're headed. So that's all I have for my superintendent report. Thank you for that lengthy time.
Any questions for Mr. Crenshaw? Very good news next time.
The attendance was good.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. That's right. Okay, next we need an executive session for legal matters. How long is it from now?
30 minutes.
30 minutes. All right.
Start.
Thank you, TJ.
I'll second.
Thank you, Deb. All right, let's see what that is. All right, we have a motion by TJ, seconded by Deb, USC 298 Board of Education, going to executive session at 8:32 for 30 minutes with the superintendent for the purpose of discussing legal matters concerning a contract, and the Board of Education returned to open meeting at 9:02. In the Board of Education conference room, the executive session is required to protect the privacy rights with regard to legal matters concerning this contract. Any discussion? All in favor? 7-0.